review of the Thar, which I have for one day. This is my brother's Thar, and this is an absolutely non-technical review. If you guys are into specs and engine capabilities and all that, this is not going to be about that. This is just about how it feels, how the Thar feels. So I apologize in advance to all the tech heads. I'm not a tech head, I'm not a technical guy. I'm just going to talk to you about how it feels to drive this thing. Woof woof.
The Mahindra Thar, a car that is becoming so much of an icon that people may soon forget that Thars are actually goat-like mammals that inhabit cliffs and mountain slopes in southern India, the Himalayas and Oman.
So we're driving this Thar around the hills of Nainital, and it's not a particularly bad road, it's a fairly decent road. Though it's still not a city road. So this will give you a fairly good idea of how this thing handles. So the moment you sit in the Thar, this new Thar, the moment you sit in it, the first thing you notice is it seems super wide. It seems like it's going to be a real tough time maneuvering the hill roads with this thing. And I actually measured it. It's 6 inches wider than the Innova. 6 inches, that's quite a bit. It feels wider than it actually is. And it'll take some time to get the hang of it. And I measure everything against the most amazing off-roader that I've driven, which is the Maruti Gypsy. Just because of its proportions. It's such a narrow car. I've taken it into gullies, I've taken it into forest roads that you would not be able to take most cars. So when you measure it against that, it really is wide. I would have been much happier if it was a little narrower, even though it is not really a problem. But when there are cars coming the opposite way or truck coming the opposite way on a hill road, it is a wide car. It's probably the widest car I've driven. So in this segment, I'm gonna just talk like they talk in those car reviews that you've seen on YouTube. I've seen that they talk about shit like the plastic quality and all that, so I'll talk about that. And they also talk about cubby holes. The reviewers are obsessed with cubby holes. Like, how the fuck do they matter, man? How many cubby holes you have? I don't care. That's not the most important thing in a car for me, whether I can put a bottle somewhere or not. Cubby holes in glove compartment, this is shit. And by the way, the glove compartment is shit in this car because we just tried to put a camera in there and it didn't fit. But it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
The instrumentation is great. It's very simple. There's a nice big touch screen here, and the quality of the plastics is also fairly decent. Noise levels inside the cabin, you'll get a good idea with this. I don't know if I'm very audible because I'm not using any mic. I'm just using the in-camera audio right now. And so you'll get an idea of what the noise levels are. I have my windows down, so obviously that will be giving a lot of engine noise. But now I'll put the windows up, so you'll get an idea of how much noise isolation there is. Yeah, now we have the windows up and I'm speaking to you with both the windows up. Another thing, it's for people who don't drive Mahindra cars, who haven't driven Scorpios and things like that, this is pretty irritating to have the windows in the middle console rather than on the door, because instinctively your hand will reach for the door and you won't find the power window button there. The gear shift is a little clunky. I mean, whenever I upshift or downshift, the clunk is there, and you expect that from a car like this. I mean, if it wasn't clunky, if it was too smooth, you would not It would not add to the experience. This adds to that butch experience. But otherwise, this feels like the ride-wise, it feels like a very refined car. There is, of course, when you go over a bad road, there's that shake. You will be doing this. You will be going side to side. There is a shake when you go over a rough road, but on smooth roads, it's really nice. But again, the drive is fantastic. There is body roll. I sat at the back yesterday, and there is a lot of body roll at the back. So ideally, this would be primarily a two-person car. I mean, there's space at the back for two people, but they'll be cramped and uncomfortable, and the bodies will be rolling around. We have a passenger at the back who you can see, who seems fairly comfortable. That's Dudo Baggins, and he seems fairly comfortable. He doesn't mind the body roll.
Two more things that make it a two-person car is the fact that the rear windows don't roll down and the boot space. If someone asks you what the boot space in the new Thar is like, the only appropriate response is
Now, the one noticeable thing that is different from the older Thar is the visibility. The visibility is much worse in this Thar. You see the size of this A-pillar. This A-pillar is absolutely huge, and for driving in the hills, that's not a good thing. And the visibility, the windshield is smaller, and the seating position makes it just much less than the older Thar. I was much happier with the visibility of the older Thar, but the driving experience of this Thar is much better. Yesterday when I was driving, I saw an eagle out of this window, and my father couldn't see it. He was seated here, he bent down, he couldn't see it. So visibility is an issue. So if you're into wildlife and you want to take this into the forest and you want to spot a lot of animals and birds, this is not the best option. And we are driving the hardtop version, so it's getting the top off is not an option. But of course, you get the comfort of air conditioning with the hard top. The air conditioning is really effective. Of course, I haven't tried out the AC. I'll take my brother's word for it, who drove it in Delhi. But the AC is super effective, he says.
After some time driving on a fairly good road, we reached a crossroads. And of course, since we were in a Thar, we took the road that looked more broken down.
Down there are the plains, you can see Ramnagar on a clear day and Kotabag that side. But you can see the clouds there, they're ready to come up. It's like an army ready to attack the hills.
Even though the road was considerably worse than before, at no point did we need to engage 4x4. The Thar has four-wheel drive in high ratio and low ratio. Even in places where I needed low ratio in my Gypsy, the Thar managed comfortably in two-wheel drive. Which brings me to the point that most people who buy this car will never really need to use it to its full capacity. Of course, there are the hardcore off-roaders who go out of their way to find places where they can put the Thar through its paces. But for most of us, we will hardly ever be putting it into four-wheel drive. Nonetheless, it's good to know that should you somehow find yourself in a sticky situation, you have the capability to get out of it. This feels almost liberating. The Thar literally changes your attitude to driving and to roads. After driving for a while, we were told that the road was closed up ahead and decided reluctantly to turn around. But not before Dudo Baggins, perhaps inspired by the Thar, decided to do some off-roading of his own. The Thar even worked its magic on the wife, who decided to take the wheel on the way back. So today we drove this car on fairly decent roads and also some really rough patches. There are many reasons not to buy the Thar. The non-existent boot space, the size of the car itself, the limited visibility, the sort of stiff ride. It offers hill assist, ABS and EBD. I don't know what those alphabets mean, but I know that they make it more secure than the older Thar on the highway. Yet, it's still not the best car on the road. The ride quality in many other cars, there's the Kia Seltos, there's the Ford EcoSport, there is the Hyundai Creta, much better. So why should someone go for this car? So for the last 2 or 3 years, I've been pretty much content to stay at home, and I don't really like driving out if I don't have to. I'm happy to be at home in front of my computer, and my wife is pretty pissed off with this. I think the technical term for it is midlife crisis. But this morning I was up at 5 a.m. just because I knew this baby was sitting in the garage and I wanted to go out for a drive. I woke my wife up, and of course Tuto Baggins was with us. I originally intended to drive for about an hour and be back for breakfast, but we just got back in time for lunch because we just wanted to go on driving. It's so much fun. I would have driven much more if the road hadn't been blocked. This car makes you want to drive. So much so that you may not find any other cars exciting to drive anymore.
Hello darkness, my old friend.
It's just a great car to drive. It's kind of an off-roader for dummies. You know, for earlier off-roaders, you need to be a kind of half a mechanic yourself to know what's going on. You needed to fix some stuff, you needed to check out the suspension. But with this, Mahindra has taken care of that. And that is a big deal. That, you know, it's an off-roader that you can just get in and it'll take you wherever you want to go. You really don't need to worry about the reliability and stuff like that. It's just so much fun to drive. One would think that the Thar is best suited for people who live on a farm, drive daily on bad roads, chop wood and use more than just the bottle opener in a Swiss Army knife. But it will most likely be driven by people who use the outer ring road to work, use the word ping instead of message, and drive to Murthal on weekends for Amrik Sukhdev's parathas. This is one of the ironies of life. Just like all the people who can afford a really good single malt are the ones that have it with half soda and half pani.
You said it, man.
But it isn't a cheap car by any means. I mean, it starts at about 14 lakhs. And so it's not a cheap car. And unfortunately, there are no cheap four-wheel drives available anymore. Ever since the Maruti Gypsy went out of production, the cheapest four-wheel drive you can get is the Bolero Camper. The Bolero does not come with four-wheel drive anymore. The Bolero Camper comes with four-wheel drive, but the catch is you have to register it as a commercial vehicle. So there really isn't any cheap four-wheel drive. You know, we keep hearing stories of the Maruti Jimny being launched in India. I've been hearing this for the past 5 years. I think every year we hear this rumor that the Maruti Jimny is going to be launched. I mean, every year it says this year it's definitely coming to India, but it hasn't come so far. And that is the one that most people were looking forward to as an affordable four-wheel drive. So the closest you get to an affordable four-wheel drive at 14 lakhs is this. So I think it's time to sell that extra kidney.
Woof woof.